But I'm so excited, Linda, to be here. Linda and I, she blessed me about 2 or 3 weeks ago by being a guest on my podcast, and we had so much fun. We said, let's do it again in another way. So let's introduce this topic to all the members of Leadership Global. And I am just so excited because I think once you see the stats, and I'm a big stats and facts guy. Okay, I really love the stats. Once you see all the stats about this opportunity, doesn't mean it's an ideal fit for everyone, but what it does mean is that at least you have the information. So you can evaluate it for your business and say, does this sound like a great way for me to grow my business, get to the next level, and create another income stream that, as the title infers, is recession proof. You can actually recession proof your business. Isn't that a cool concept? So anyway, I want to go ahead. I'm going to share my screen now, and we're going to get started. I have some great information for you. We'll also leave some time at the end for a little Q&A. So if you have some questions, if you would, let's save most of the questions until the end if we could, unless there's just one that's like, oh, I've got to have this question answered before we can go on. If you want, put that in the chat, because I'm fortunate enough, I've got two of my very talented colleagues on the call with me today, and they can definitely answer that question. So if you want to put it in the chat, we'll get to that ahead of time. And then at the end, again, I'll have plenty of time for a little bit of Q&A then. So without any further ado, Linda, I'm going to go ahead and get started. All right. Okay. Now, super. Just want to, our title today, as I just mentioned before, Thrive in the Recession, or in a recession, through the power of no-bid federal contracts. The reason we call it that is that we're not always in a recession, right? We're not constantly, thank goodness, we're not always in a recession. But the fact is, different industries can be in recessionary types of situations almost all the time. And then we have the big recessions like 2008. We have economic situation like we had during the pandemic that affected a number of industries. All right. So, you can almost be looking all the time at when is the next recession, whether it's a big one, whether it's one that affects just my industry, when is it going to happen? And that's usually when most small businesses that don't make it, that's when they don't make it. Okay, during a recession. It's tough. So why not have an income stream, a source of revenue that's going to be recession proof? Here's a little inside information. The federal government actually spends more money during a recession than it does otherwise. And they just spend a lot of money all the time on everything. We're going to talk about that. But during a recession, they spend a lot more. All right. And of course, I'm your host, Ron Imbach. I'm the executive director of the International Association of U.S. Government Contractors. We're going to talk a little bit more about us during the presentation as well, but I want to go ahead and get into the meat of it because there's a lot of information. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Excuse me. That was I just wanted to, just so we know who's in the audience, who we're talking to, if you guys wouldn't mind putting in the chat box your name, your phone number, because we are going to have some information that we can send to you that's going to help you. If this sounds like it's a great fit for you and you want to get started, we're going to send you some information that can kind of get you on your way for that. All right. And then just tell us a little bit about your business, if you would. If you want to tell us the industry you're in, that's helpful as well. But if you want to give us an idea of revenue, and the reason we ask revenue, these no bid contracts that I'm going to focus on today, there are some limitations based on the NAICS code on how much business you do in that NAICS code. Now, if you're a business and you only have one NAICS code that you do, and you're a $25 million business, you may or may not qualify for a no bid business. But if you're a $25 million business, you have 5 different NAICS codes, most likely you'll qualify for all of the NAICS code for the no bid contracts. So if you would, once again, just let us know that. We'd really appreciate it. And we can get some information out to you and know a little bit about you. All right. This is me. That's a fairly recent picture, although I've been told some folks can tell it's a few years old, but I have been in the business transformation business for a long, long time, working with small businesses, big businesses, mature businesses, young businesses, startups, even for-profit and nonprofit businesses, all the way around. Of course, over the last several years, I've been focused on helping small businesses get these federal contracts, okay, and to market themselves and build relationships, that kind of thing. We're also I've started a number of businesses myself, and somewhere along the line, I did get an MBA in marketing, but my undergraduate degree is in accounting and economics. So I like the numbers, but I'd rather do the marketing. It's more fun. My partner and I, Chip Ellis, are also gold level score presenters. We've been doing that for a long time. Really, it's our give back to small businesses. So we do a lot of those presentations. We've achieved the gold level status the last few years, and we work with a number of chapters all over the country. Now, I'm also going to encourage you because, again, this is kind of a free benefit of coming here for all the people that are here. We're going to give you a 15-minute free coaching session with Sebastian. Sebastian is on the call today, and Sebastian is going to put his calendar link into the chat. So just click on that if you want to schedule a time to talk with Sebastian for about 15 minutes, because I may not be able to answer your question today, or it may be something specific that you just like to talk about one-on-one with me or one of our members, or in this case, Sebastian from our team, and we'd be glad to talk with you about it. So go ahead, look in the chat, get Sebastian's calendar link, and go ahead and schedule a time that's convenient for you. All right? Now, we're going to talk about how to thrive in a recession in 2024. Now, I don't know whether, again, when I say this, the overall economy, and you can look at certain stats, and we're not in good economic. You look at others, and it looks like we are. Some industries are doing well, some aren't. But again, this is more because once you're in the recession, and let's say a 2008 level recession were to happen end of this year or next year. Well, if you're not prepared for it, if you haven't started building relationships, which we're going to talk about that a lot today, building relationships with federal contacts, it might be too late to get the federal contracts then. All right. So you want to start building those relationships ahead of time, because you can always get contracts. They spend even more money during a recession. Now, the federal government is one place that you can look for as a major target market for what we call giant clients that can give you 20 times or more the profit of your regular normal client. You have city, county, state government. They can give you those kinds of there's a lot of potential there because, quite frankly, they spend a lot of money and they spend it on a lot of stuff. Okay. The only thing about state, county, city governments, local governments, and there's nothing wrong with it, but the only thing about it is their tax base is not quite as stable as the federal government. Now, if you're already doing business with one of those entities, don't stop. All I'm basically saying with this is that if you're not doing anything with the federal government, it's an income stream you definitely should learn about, explore, and you may want to add it to your business. I was a financial advisor at one time as well, and I used to talk about diversifying your portfolio. So I'm basically suggesting here, if you don't have that as one of your key components, one of your key income streams, you really should, but I'm not saying forget the others. I'm just saying to add federal contracting into that, and who knows, it may end up at some point being the dominant income stream for you. Foreign governments are also good in that they spend a lot of money and they spend it on a lot of stuff. So that's great. The only thing is, between regulations that can be different in a foreign country, currencies, as well as just travel back and forth sometimes to build the relationships. If you're putting all your eggs in that basket, that can take a little longer than it can with some of these domestic income streams or sources of revenue. All right. So nothing wrong with it. Just you may not want to put all your eggs in that basket. Remember, diversify. Right. And then large commercial. Obviously, everyone wants to have Fortune 500, Global 1000 companies. Absolutely. But if you remember, those companies were the ones that were hit hard in 2008 when we had our last big recession across the board. And what did it do? It hurt businesses all the way down the line that worked with them. So you don't want to overweight, and that's a phrase I used to use all the time as well as an advisor. You don't want to overweight in any of those areas. Add federal contracting into it, and and unless that may be your dominant source, it may not be, but at least have that because it can help you through those rough times like the recession. So that's what we're going to obviously focus on. Now, here's a key stat that just think about this, okay? Because you've all got the potential market that you can do, potential clients for every one of you. And generally speaking, if you add the federal market, because it is so big, you're going to add 25 to 40% to what we call the total addressable market. So the market that you can access, that you have the potential to do business with. And you can't do that in any other of those categories I just went through. You can't have, because I think as Linda said when she introduced me so well, that the federal government is the biggest customer that any business can have, bar none. Okay, the biggest customer any business anywhere in the world can have because they spend more money. And we're going to talk about that quite a bit. Now, let's talk about the opportunity. Okay, I love these graphics. I had someone at our company find a lot of these for me. I love the graphics on this. So there are 4,600 agencies in the federal government. And I'll put it like this. None of those four, even the smallest ones, are not what I would call mom and pop companies. Even the smallest ones have budgets of tens of millions of dollars. The largest ones, which everyone knows about, the Defense Department, Homeland Security, State Department, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, they have billion dollar budgets, multi-billion dollar budgets. So all the agencies, so you could get an incredible client that could actually be the smallest agency in the federal government. They'd still be a great client for most people. So that's what I mean by incredible wealth of opportunity. So you can target, again, you could target the bottom five, the smallest five, and still have five incredible large giant clients to do business with. And here's another stat for those of you who happen to be in, let's say you're in some kind of a building maintenance type of business, whether it's you're a roofing company or you're a cleaning company or you're a landscaping company. Take a look at this. There are 361,000 federal buildings in the United States and around the world. 361,000. And if you think about it, my saying is there aren't too many of those that are one-bedroom condos. There are huge buildings that need all kinds of stuff. All right. So keep that in mind. So there's just so much that the federal government needs. Also keep in mind, the federal government doesn't produce anything. And I'm not trying to be negative when I say that, because obviously we work with clients working with the federal government all the time, but they don't produce anything. So you will never find a manufacturing facility with the Department of Commerce on it. You will never find, top management consulting provided by the Department of the Interior. So goods and services, specialized goods and services, and all kinds of things that the federal government needs, they need to get it from private companies just like yours. All right. Also, there are 5 million plus federal employees. That's a whole lot of employees. And any one of those folks who can make a decision to buy something is a potential client of yours. All right, just think about that. Any one of them, because they're all what we call end users across the board with all the different departments. But if you think about that, all of those decision makers, whether they're buying paper clips or whether they're doing construction and building wings and having roads built or wings put on buildings or whatever, new buildings put up, okay, they can all make decisions. You can work with any of those folks. And they're all over the country. So if you're in the example I use, and if there's anyone from North Dakota, and I believe Jeffrey's from North Dakota, if I'm not mistaken, I know other folks are as well. I always use them as an example because it's not a densely populated state. But even if you're in North Dakota or Alaska or whatever the case may be, there's still going to be federal facilities and agencies in that area that you can work with. And if you can work all over the country, all over the world, sky's the limit, right? So just think about how much all of those buildings, all those employees in those buildings, all over the world, all the things that they need. A lot of stuff. All right. Now, I'm going to just start off with this by saying the federal government wants to work with small businesses. Women-owned small businesses, we're going to get into some specific laws for that, but just overall small businesses. The federal government wants to work with you. All right. And they are the largest customer in the world. Here's the number. Remember, I told you I like facts and stats. 760 plus million is what the federal government spent last year on procurement contracts. Contracts with companies just like yours for all kinds of goods and services. 700, over $750 billion. I just love to use that number. And here's a law favoring small businesses specifically. Of that 760 plus billion dollars, over 600 billion was specifically set aside for small businesses. The federal government wanted to give those contracts to small businesses just like yours. Now, this next stat, don't get discouraged by this because it's actually very encouraging. All right. Small businesses only received about 25%. Now, that's still a lot of money, $153 billion. But frankly, that's 25% of the total that was set aside. You may look at that and think, oh, that's negative. What do you mean they want to work with small businesses? Small businesses need to do the right things. Okay. And here's what I mean by do the right things. They need to show up properly, and we're going to define what that is. They need to build great relationships. That's very, very important. And in addition to that, once you get a contract, you need to do a good job and get a good rating. Then you get more and more and more and larger ones. Okay. So here's how I'm going to encourage you by that stat. I get the question all the time, hey, Ron, are there any contracts available for me? And I usually say, if you do the three things I just mentioned, well, let's see, there's about $450 billion available to small businesses that so far they have to have the things done. They have to have the grass cut. They have to have the roof repaired. So, but when they don't have a small business to work with, they give it to a big business. When that contract's up, guess who they love to work with on the next one? A small business. Okay. So if you are there and you're showing up properly and you built great relationships, that contract can be yours if you're a good small business. Okay. And then do a good job and you get a bunch more. All right. So that's really cool. So, but if you really think about it, all of that money, $450 plus billion, that's money that's being left on the table. That's money that could go to small businesses if, again, they showed up properly and built great relationships. Those two themes you're going to hear me mention several times. And if you ever listen to a masterclass I do or anything else we do with our company, you're going to hear me mention those two things over and over and over again. They're key. They're key. All right. Now, I want to also bring your attention, if you look at the bottom about small, I want to make sure I'm clear about this, what exactly that means. And I mentioned a little at the beginning, the federal government to determine whether you are eligible for a no-bid contract, because no-bid contracts, I'm going to review this in a minute, are not available to big businesses. In some circumstances, they are. We'll review that, hit on that just very briefly. But they have to work with a small business, essentially what it is. But essentially, they look at NAICS codes. Okay, that's whatever type of business that you do. That's your industry code. And for various NAICS codes, they have limits. Some of them are as low as $7 million. If you do more than $7 million with that NAICS code, you're now eligible for a no bid with that. Some of them go all the way up to $30 million. All right. So as long as you're in that range with a NAICS code, and typically we say most of them are between 10 and 19 million, and that's again per NAICS code. If your business has 5 NAICS codes, like I mentioned before, then you probably don't have anything to worry about unless you're, $100 million company maybe. But otherwise, you probably don't have anything to worry about with that. But I wanted to make sure I clarified that so everyone knew what that meant. Now, another federal law that favors small businesses, all contracts about 250,000 or less. And wouldn't that be a good contract for most small businesses? 83 million of those contracts per year are set aside for small businesses. Every one of them. And the great part about it is that, you might think, well, aren't most federal contracts huge contracts? That those contracts, 250,000 or less, are over 90% of all procurement contracts. Once again, the federal government, this is a law really favoring small businesses. They want to work with good small businesses. All right. Now, but this is even more dramatic than the last stat I gave you about revenue. 3.4 million contracts is a lot of contracts. But if you think about it, there's 79, 80 million contracts last year that could have gone to small businesses that didn't. And if you really think about stats, think about the stats. The stats are ugly. I didn't put them on here, but we do talk to members and people who want to know more about that all the time. But if you really think about it, with all of the businesses who go out of business, even in their first year, in year 2, in year 5, by year 10, by all of it, just think if you pumped all this money back into the economy that they want to go to small businesses, and small businesses actually were awarded those contracts. That would change that picture quite a bit. All right. So don't look at that as a negative. Look at it as a positive. Look at all those contracts that I could be getting if I showed up properly and built great relationships. All right. And here's what I mean by showing up properly. There's really two aspects to it. You do have to have certain registrations to work with the federal government. Should that surprise anyone? No, it shouldn't surprise anyone. We've all filed tax returns, right? Okay. So, I mean, a lot of folks just get finished doing that. And I've got to work on mine. But the point is, though, so they do make you do that. But the registrations are not onerous in that they take you, days and days to complete. They're not that bad. Now, I'm not going to tell you that they're easy to complete, but it might only take you an hour or two to complete them. Okay, so that's not a big deal. They don't make you go through some kind of a certification process that lasts 2, 3, 4, 5 years before you can get a contract. They don't have huge barriers to entry with like additional bonds that you have to put on before you get a contract. They don't make you do that. Again, they want to work with small businesses. The second reason, and for businesses who don't follow those rules, yeah, they're not showing up properly. In addition to that, there are ways to get federal contracts. There's about 100 of them, okay? And there can be even a few more than that. But let's just say 100, nice round number. And a lot of people will try to get into federal contracting, do it the wrong way, not have success, get frustrated, and then get out of federal contracting and say, I'm never going to try this again. All those contracts must go to small business or must go to big businesses. So it's not a small business game. It is a small business game. You're just not playing the game, or those people aren't playing the game correctly. You play the game correctly. You try to enter. Okay, just think of those doors that I mentioned there going into a huge house that's full of contracts and full of money. You want to get into that house. But if you go through the wrong door, you beat your head against a brick wall, change, do it another way. Okay. And much of that another way is through building relationships. Now, only 2% of U.S. small businesses. You could ask a lot of people that you know in business. Have you ever heard of these no bid contracts? Okay. No, they don't. Okay. They haven't even heard of them. And only 2% of U.S. small businesses are actually eligible to be a prime contractor. So let me ask you, if you're one of those 2%, will that give you a competitive advantage over other businesses in your industry? Absolutely. Absolutely it will. Okay. Now let's talk about the two methods to sell or to get contracts with the federal government. First one is competitive bids. I'm going to, with this one, give you two stipulations. if you're trying to go in and bid competitively and you have no federal experience or very little, but let's say you have no in this situation, no federal experience, and you don't have relationships, you don't have a relationship with the contracting officer, man, that is a tough road because you got a lot of nasty, mind-numbing red tape. Okay, some of these contracts, they call them bid specs. All right. Some of the bid specs that are submitted are 80, 100, 200 pages long. They're awful to try and do. And unless you do it full time for a living, you will hate it. You just do it from time to time. And then if you don't have federal experience and you don't know someone, you don't know the contracting officer, they haven't built a relationship with you, you're not going to win. Okay. Very, very, very rarely you'd have almost as good a chance playing the lottery. Okay. So don't do it. That's not the way. That's not the door to go through, as I just mentioned. You don't want to get into federal contracting in that way. And the crazy thing is that, it's kind of this vicious kind of circle about, if you never get a contract to getting the experience, yet they tell you, well, you need federal experience to get a contract. It just doesn't compute. Okay, it doesn't make sense. But what doesn't make sense is trying to go through that door. Okay, so that's not the way to do it. Now, why is it like that? Why do buyers, okay, and they're one of the primary folks that are going to buy for their agency and buy from businesses just like yours, why is that? Because they can lose their job. And here's what I mean by lose a job. Let's say there are 10 people bidding on a contract. Okay, and of the 10 people bidding on that contract, let's say they're all around $100,000 on a contract. So they're all equal like that. Well, if the buyer decides I'm going to go with ABC company because they may not have any contracts, any experience, I don't know them, but I want to give them a chance. And then if ABC company falls flat on their face, they don't do a good job, the buyer's boss is going to come in and say, why'd you do that? And depending on the size of the contract, that may be the end of the buyer's job. So they're afraid of small businesses that they don't know and who don't have federal experience so that they can have an idea about them. So consequently, and they're evaluated frequently, but here's the dilemma. What did I say on the last several slides about the federal government and small businesses? They want to do business with good small businesses. So it's a dilemma. Okay, it's a catch-22 for the buyer because, okay, my agency's saying to get small businesses to work on these contracts, but if they do a bad job, I could be out on the street. What do I do? Okay, so it's a difficult situation. So we tell our members of our association, basically, can you win a cold bid? Don't even try it. And again, cold bid meaning no federal experience. You don't know the contracting officer, all right? So because they don't want to risk their jobs, they're afraid of you, all right? They're afraid of you if they don't know you like that. Now, I will tell you this before getting into there are things that we call warm bids. It's not on one of the slides, but I do want to just mention it real quick. And remember, I mentioned the two things, federal experience or a relationship with a contracting officer. A warm bid's when you maybe don't have federal experience or very little, but you've developed such a great relationship with a contracting officer, a buyer, an end user, that they say, hey, Jill, Mary, Sam, whatever, go bid on this contract. And they'll actually ask you to bid on. In that situation, it's okay to bid on. They're asking you to bid on. It's not 100% you're going to get it, but your odds just went way, way up that you might get that contract. So, but when it comes to the cold bidding that I've been talking about, no federal experience, no relationship, this is what we tell our clients. We're a Christian company, and this is our kind of our 11th commandment, if you will. Thou shalt not, and I think you know what this is going to be, cold bid. Just don't do it. You don't have much of a chance. All right. Now we're going to focus here on out on no bids, of course, but I want you to get to be able to distinguish between the two. No bids are all about relationships. If you don't have a relationship with your federal buyer decision maker, you're not going to get a no bid contract because they're told don't give them out unless you have a relationship. You can even give them out to people with no federal experience, give them a small one to see how they do. Okay. But if you don't know them, you don't give them these kinds of contracts. They don't want to risk their job. So that's why they can give a no bid contract out with a relationship, because if you do a bad job, you're not going to get another one, but at least they won't lose their job, the buyer. They're only for small businesses. I mentioned some of the dollars a few minutes ago. They are fixed price, so you're not going to, that's one of the worst things about bidding, right? How much do I bid? You don't have to worry about that with no bid contracts. They're going to give you the price, and there's no bid is not a trick phrase, no competition. No competition. They can go all the way up to $13 million. That's pretty cool, right? And they're unlimited to or to the same contractor. You can, so if you get one or two, you don't have to think I've met my quota. You can have more. And unlimited contracts at the same time. So you can be working on multiple contracts at the same time. Now let's just think about this. I'm going to summarize a little bit here. Only customer to thrive in a recession. We talked about that. They spend more money in a recession. $760 billion. That makes them the biggest customer anywhere in the world. That's how much they spend on procurement contracts. 80% of that, over $600 billion, set aside for small businesses just like yours. And this number is even a little bit bigger, but it's between 50 and probably $80 billion in these no bid contracts that I just talked about. And 100% of contracts under 250K. And again, that's over 90% of all procurement contracts are under $250,000. Here's another great law as well. When the big guys do get a contract, let's say, Lockheed Martin gets a big contract, or Boeing, or whatever the case may be, they have got to sub out. That's why a lot of people are subcontractors. I live just outside of Washington, D.C., a lot of subcontractors. And they have to sub out on those big contracts over 30% of that contract to small businesses. That's how I got my first experience many moons ago, over 30 years ago, with federal contracting. All right. I was a subcontractor for a large consulting firm. All right. So once again, with small businesses, remember, there's usually a limit. We just put kind of in general there, but it can go as low as 7. You can go all the way up to 30. I think there are a few that are even more than that, but generally speaking, that's it. A fixed price, no competition. Isn't that great? Grow under control. You don't have to worry about if you see a contract doesn't have a good profit margin, doesn't work with your schedule, you can turn it down. That's okay. They won't get upset with you for doing that. All right. They'll kind of look at, they must be a pretty secure small business. They might be good to work with if they were able to turn down work, right? You have better margins because of use it or lose it budgets. If the federal government, with all agencies, if by the end of their fiscal year, they actually haven't spent or allocated funds, they will lose them for the upcoming year. No one wants to lose budget and lose money. So they're always spending money. So you can often get what I call bonus contracts or bonus profit contracts. They may give you $100,000 to do something that you can do and make a profit at $75,000. And you might say they don't know what they're doing. Yes, they know exactly what they're doing. They don't want to lose their budget. All right. And here, isn't this cool? If you're worried at all about, well, what if there's a recession coming up later in the year or next year or something like that, and people can't pay, what am I going to do? The federal government has to pay you in 30 days after you invoice them, or they pay a substantial penalty. Don't plan on getting paid the substantial penalty. I've been doing this for a while. My partner Chip's been doing it longer. We've only seen it once or twice. So don't plan on that, but do plan on getting paid on time. And again, it can increase your total addressable market that you can go after by 25 to 40%. Isn't that incredible? If you want to grow your business, it's a great way to do it. Now, I mentioned there are ways that big businesses can participate, whether they could be no bid contracts or they could be smaller contracts, and they can do it with the Mentor Protege program. This would be a totally different discussion or a longer discussion, which I don't have time for, but I am just going to tell you that's ways that big businesses and small businesses can partner, and both can benefit from those situations. They can also do it with sole source joint ventures, and also the concept of teaming, where a small business is the prime, a big business is their sub on a contract. So those are ways that you can even get additional work besides doing the work directly yourself. All right. As a company, we have something called a private procurement conference. We started doing this a few years back because the authority of the small business specialists. I've mentioned buyers. I think I mentioned end users. They're actually in the agencies, but also every agency has small business specialists. This is one of our most common strategies for our members is to build relationships with small business specialists. So we started having our own private procurement conferences where we bring agency small business specialists on and our members meet them. It's almost like we've had some of them, and I've referred to it as well as speed dating. That starts the relationship that then you continue to cultivate and build from that point. This will look at a forecast, an opportunities forecast for, one agency, USDA. And this is what all of our members who were at one of those particular conferences a year or so ago, they got this. And essentially the small business specialist said, tell me what you're interested in and you might want to work on, and I'll give you the introduction to the right person. All right. So that was really cool. And here's why it's cool. You might say, well, why are these people? They're not, and quite frankly, they're not direct buyers. They're not going to buy from you directly. But here's why it's important to have relationships with them. They usually work with 80 buyers, and the 80 buyers work with usually around 20 end users apiece. So by building a great relationship with a small business specialist, you can get referrals to 1,600 end users and 80 buyers. You can get introductions. It takes a little while to get the referral, the recommendation, because again, after the rules changed a few years ago, now the buyer, the end user, are going to listen to the small business specialist. So consequently, but even an introduction is beautiful. Okay, they've saved you a lot of time, and the introductions come from someone they know in their agency. So it's really, really cool. Okay, so like I said, it's been like this a couple of years now. So if you look at it, the rules changed September 30th of 2021. And prior to that, we still had people building, members of ours building relationships with small business specialists. But if they made a recommendation, the buyer wasn't bound by that at all. Okay, so I don't even like the word worthless as much, but it wasn't worth very much. Let's put it like that. Now, if you get that recommendation, it's incredibly important. Now, you got to build a relationship to get that recommendation, but it's very, very, very important. So this is a strategy that's worked out very well for our members of our association. Why is it the greatest time in history to get into this market? Well, quite frankly, the power of the small business specialists. Very, very, very important. Okay, the rules have now changed. You build a relationship with them. What did I say? About 1,700 people that they can refer you to. Very cool. Very cool. I like exponentially. Okay, it works with things that can help grow exponentially. You can add 25 to 40% to your total addressable market. The federal government is the only potential, what we call giant clients, what a lot of people call giant clients. It's like that. They have to pay you in 30 days. Okay, so they're going to pay you on time. You don't have to worry about cash flow with that. And right now, April, May, June are great relationship building quarters because the golden quarter is about to come up. And that's the quarter that the federal government is so busy because they're like, oh my goodness, I got to spend my budget. All right. So they're just spending money left and right then. All right. So getting in now, starting to build relationships, preparing yourself for this coming golden quarter. And, it could even be a little bit tough because you're not, if you're just getting into it brand new, you're not even going to be registered yet. So it might be tough, but you still could benefit by the end of that quarter, maybe in September. And they're really spending money in September because the deadline's there. September 30th is the end of the fiscal year. Okay. And for women-owned small businesses, like I know most of you are on here, your set aside is one of the best ones to have. Right now, I'm going to have some stats at the end. It is definitely one of the best set-asides to have because the federal government really wants to work with women-owned small businesses, okay? So instead of, spending all that time working on those bids that I'm just telling you you're going to hate. I know people that do that for a living. They may enjoy it because they make a lot of money, but if you just do one from time to time, you're going to be hating life. You're not going to enjoy it. Why not do what you already doing? Do what you do with C-suites, what you do with leadership global, build relationships. You just have to do it with federal decision makers. Little bit of uniqueness. You have to do it a certain way in some ways, but they're all people. They want, they're very nice people to work with. You'll find that out if you start doing that. So why don't you move some of your time to working on this addressable market? Okay, just take, it's not all your time. Like I said before, I'm just suggesting diversify. I'm not suggesting if this is a good fit, diversify. So shift some of your marketing budget, shift some of your marketing time to focus on federal contracts in the federal market. That's what I'm saying. We found that there are bigger markets. Or bigger margins. I'm sorry. That's what a lot of our clients tell us. With fixed pricing, no competition on these no bid contracts. So really, really cool stuff. And they pay you on time. Again, don't plan on getting the big penalties, or they don't like to pay bonuses, but it does mean they'll pay you on time. Now, here are some stats about women-owned small businesses, and this is just incredible. Once again, the federal government wants to work with women-owned small businesses. Last year, you achieved a record-setting $30 billion in federal contracts just in 2023. Okay, that's incredible. That's the highest number in women-owned business small. So the trends are definitely going in the right direction for you. So if this sounds like an opportunity that makes sense, jump on it, okay? Because definitely the trend is going in your direction. Double-digit percentage rise in women-owned small businesses registering for contracts. So a lot of women are starting to see this. My goodness, there's such an opportunity there, and they want to work with us. That's one of their set-asides. Wow, I better get on board, okay? Increase by double digits, okay? I didn't get the exact number there, but I think it's between 15 and 20%. SBA expanded eligible industries for women-owned small business status by 70%. Okay, that's an incredible increase of women-owned small businesses that now in so many more industries that you can benefit from this set aside. Now, the federal government also invested in women business centers, an additional 160 of them around the country to help women-owned small businesses get these federal contracts. Isn't that cool as well? And then the feds also want to increase the share of federal contracting to small disadvantaged businesses. I know Linda mentioned this at the very beginning as well, by 50% by 2025. So if you're a women-owned business, if you're a small disadvantaged business, there are so many different things, because some of the big, besides the women-owned business, if you're a service-disabled vet, that's a great set-aside to have. If your business is located in a hub zone, that's a great set-aside to have. If you're a minority-owned business or an 8A business, okay, you qualify for the 8A status. You can get that. Once again, wonderful. If you have something like, if you're a Native American-owned business, that's a wonderful set-aside. So there's so many, and all the set-aside, I mean, you've already, if you're a small business, I think you've got the best set-aside of all. But then to also have these additional set-asides, like being a women-owned small business, is so important. It's absolutely incredible.